¡Otro viernes más! Bueno, esto no es otro viernes más en realidad. Esto es el viernes más jodido de todo el año. En cuanto a Star Citizen se refiere, porque está, bueno, la tienda caída y demás. Y otro viernes más con el Star Citizen Live. Que será la inteligencia artificial and you. You supongo que será nosotros, ¿no? Y bueno, faltan un minutito a ver qué se cuentan. Vamos a tratar de... Vamos a tratar de hacer esto ya, casi ya nos queda listo. Y no sé qué van a decir, si van a decirnos algo, lo vamos a ver ahora mismo, ¿no? Lo vamos a ver ya mismo. Ay. Está la cosa ahí, esperemos que, bueno. Esperemos que arranque la web en el... Algo tendrán que decir de la caída, seguramente. Algo soltarán. Algo soltarán. Vamos a ver.
All right, you ready? Here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live, AI and You. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of our day to... What? Oh, am I not supposed to... Hold on.
There's a bug there, Jared.
It's where we take an hour out of our day at the end of the week and chat about a topic related to the development of Star Citizen. Today, we have members of our esteemed various AI teams on the show.
Bueno, está diciendo que bienvenidos al Star Citizen Live. Hoy tienen miembros del equipo de inteligencia artificial y demás.
Let's just go around the room, do what we always do, introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about what we do, who we are, and all that jazz. We'll just go clockwise. We'll go counterclockwise. So this way, William, who are you? What do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, I'm Will. I'm an AI programmer. Specifically, I work on ships along with Andrea. I recently have been working a fair bit on the sort of pilot combat, like how fighters behave in combat and trying to vary it.
Está comentando que Will es el encargado, bueno, una de las personas encargadas de trabajar en el tema de las naves, de cómo se comportan en combate y demás, la inteligencia artificial, los NPCs de las naves, ¿no?
Hello, I'm a senior gameplay programmer. I work on the social AI team, but I'm not very social. I'm quite shy. And I'm currently working on some stuff for Squadron 42 to do with people eating and drinking in the mess halls. So we've got lots of social behavior.
Dice que esta persona pues es el encargado de la inteligencia artificial ahora mismo, está trabajando en Escuadrón 42 en la zona de comida, ¿no? En los comedores, donde la gente pues interactúa a nivel social y demás con las bebidas, la comida y eso.
But that kind of stuff and all of the AI behaviors to do with that. So that's what I'm working on.
Okay. Next up, Andrea. Who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Yeah, I'm an AI programmer in the Frankfurt office, and my work focus mainly on ship AI. So I work with William most of the time, and I've been working the recent time in this year mostly on the 3D navigation aspects of ship AI, and more in general the awareness of the spatial environment, so even properties of environment.
Bueno, nos está comentando que esto trabaja con William, también en el tema de las naves, la inteligencia de las naves y el tema relacionado de que haya conciencia de que las naves se mueven en un entorno tridimensional y demás, y lo que son los caminos que... O sea, la conciencia de que el NPC tiene un espacio tridimensional para moverse.
Francesco, who are you? What do you do for Star Citizen?
I'm the AI director. I'm Francesco Orcucci, and I'm mostly working a bit with
all the guys here. I'm trying to make sure that all the architecture, all the systems fit together. Try to do some work myself, when I'm not busy with.
Bueno, Francucci creo que se llama, sería el pegamento de las personas que están aquí trabajando, ¿no? Que se asegura de que la arquitectura de todas las cosas, pues, interactúa correctamente o bueno, pues a la hora de trabajar ellos, pues que es el enlace, ¿no? Entre ellos, digamos.
Sí.
I bet. And last but certainly not least, Dan.
Hey, I'm Dan. I'm lead system designer in the Frankfurt office, and I deal with a lot of the system works. But in regards with AI, I deal with the designs on the FPS combat AI team, and more specifically, more recently, the combat for Vandu, the combat behaviors for Vandu.
Bueno, este que está aquí es el puto amo, básicamente, el último que ha hablado, que es todo el que hace la esquemática de, que no lo ha dicho ahora, pero es el que hizo la esquemática de cómo va a ser el futuro de la vida de a bordo de las naves, de tener que atender las plantas de... O sea, todo el sistema de ingeniería de apagar incendios o de controlar lo que serían los diferentes componentes de la nave, de apagarlos, encenderlos, gestiones de energía. Y ahora mismo actualmente pues está trabajando en el tema de la inteligencia artificial del FPS y también concretamente ahora mismo en el sistema de combate Bandul.
As happens quite frequently with these major events, got very excited all at the same time. We are here doing this show. I don't have any formal updates for you. I don't have any information to give you other than what you already have, other than to say that there are top people who aren't doing a show right now who are all working on that. And if we have any updates during the course of the show, we'll be sure to provide them for you. With that,
Bueno, están comentando de que hay un montón de gente ahora mismo trabajando en el tema que pasa, la situación que pasa ahora en Star Citizen, que no se puede acceder al juego ni acceder a la web ni nada, y que ahora mismo están aquí en el live las personas que vemos, pero hay otro montón de gente trabajando en resolver ese problema, y que si tienen alguna actualización, alguna novedad sobre el tema, nos la comunicarán a través del evento del live.
do the same on Spectrum. Well, you could if Spectrum was working. So we'll just stick to Twitch chat. That's what happens.
Dice que bueno, que normalmente se pueden hacer preguntas a través de Spectrum. Antes de cada show, pues hay un apartado donde podemos rellenar preguntas, pero que ahora mismo que está caído Spectrum, que no pueden acceder y que van a pillar las preguntas directamente de lo que sería el live solamente.
Sounds good.
What happens? Why does this happen?
So yeah, I mean, we had funny enough, this type of bug is visually always looks similar, right? So I think since the beginning, I think really probably is one of the oldest bug we have. I think it's maybe 4 years ago started to we started to have people standing in the chair, and the bugs that it was at that time is completely different from the bugs that we have right now. We started with having, I think one of the first one I remember was there was something to do with the animation that when the look pose was actually kicking in and causing the body to turn, then it would go on basically full body animation would kick in, and it would just detach the thing from the chair or the couch, so there was one long time ago, and then I think for a while we've been quite in a good shape, and then we started with object container streaming, and this is where I think we are starting to find more sync issue in a sense. So basically, for people who don't know, right, the chairs in Star Citizen are pretty much usable, what we call usable. And what usables are pretty much just the representation that the AI has of how to interact with the world. So a chair is pretty much just an object where you can sit. And to achieve that, what you do is there is one part that is on the AI code that basically says oh, there's something where I can sit. So how do I need to arrive to start to play the animation to enter into the chair, and then I play my idle on top of the chair. Then there is this coupling of these two objects that is the character and the chair, right? And then what happens is there's the streaming code that can happen at different times, right? So when you are part of the chair right now, you're also part of the aggregate of the environment. So when the environment streams out, ideally what it should happen is that the attached object should first stream out, that is usually the character, then the environment streams out, and then when we streams in, the environment streams in, and then the character streams in as well, and he knows that it should be attached to the chair, and then the kind of request gets propagated to the different components.
Bueno, está hablando un poquito de por qué vemos NPCs cortados o NPCs mal sentados en los asientos, en las sillas y demás. Cuando entramos al juego, vamos haciendo las cosas raras con los objetos del entorno en general. Lo que dice, entre comillas, o sea, lo que dice en resumen es que el tema está en que cuando el Content Streaming, que bueno, es el retransmisor de objetos contenidos, que es lo que permite, es lo que nos permite a nosotros, pues, poder viajar en el juego a través de un mundo tan grande, pues solo se nos carga una porción de ese juego y el servidor también solo carga la porción del juego que nosotros necesitamos. Eso permite que el universo sea muchísimo más bestia, que los mapas pues no tengan, o sea, pues sean enormes, gigantes, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Que cuando nosotros interactuamos con esa necesidad de llamar ese objeto, con el hoyo content streaming, los tiempos de carga del objeto y los tiempos de carga del NPC no coinciden. Entonces, al no coincidir, se produce un fallo que lo que hace es que el objeto cargue antes de tiempo o el NPC cargue antes de tiempo y no la programación que tiene la IA no es capaz de resolver esa interactuación para que funcione correctamente. En el código no. Porque se supone que cuando tú eres un NPC y tienes un código asignado y ese código asignado pues dice, bueno, hay un objeto, ¿qué puedo hacer con ese objeto? ¿Cómo se puede resolver la situación? ¿No? ¿Cómo me aproximo? ¿Cómo me siento? Pero si ese objeto no carga a tiempo, pues que se producen fallos, ¿no? Y por eso vemos NPCs subidos en las sillas, en las mesas o atravesando ciertas cosas.
That character streams back in, because there are characters that might be dynamic, right?
Hey,
So
gracias por la
maybe the
suscripción.
chair then remains forever reserved and then actually never comes into play. So we actually already added like some code that basically handles that. And now we basically found another bug that is actually under investigation and we are trying to solve it. Basically, that is like sometimes happens that the character streams before the object in which is attached to. So we are running, we are basically handling this code a bit better, and we are trying to handle the fact that some of this order might be slightly different, even if right now where should not have really happened that one, but it will also like keep the state. And the problem is this ownership within this code, right? What we want to have, as well as achieving as a developers, is to try to have code that is owning that state, right? So that you can tell it's like, okay, I should be sitting there now. If the chair is not coming, I know it's gonna come, so it doesn't matter if it comes in this frame, next frame, or in 10 frames or 1 second, but I know that this is my state and I should not run other logic to do other things and complete the sync. This is basically where we are at. And of course, it's quite fun to see that he's always the guy standing on the chair, right? It looks like, it's like, that's hard to fix that. And
En resumidas, lo que tratan de hacer es, mediante aplicando una lógica a través de la programación, de que el NPC efectivamente tenga un loop o una dinámica donde se reconozca la silla en el momento adecuado. Es decir, si no hay la silla, que haga otra acción lógica, que cambie de posición, haga otra cosa, hasta que la silla esté disponible. Una vez la silla esté disponible, pues es ya cuando el NPC debería de sentarse. Y que dice que es en el momento que están ahora mismo en tratar de resolver ese tema para que los NPCs pues funcionen de esa manera, ¿no?
And the thing is, the good thing is the progress is still happening. So what I mean is like these systems are getting much more stable. It's just that you, as a player, of course, sometimes you might perceive there is no change, but actually there have been a lot of changes.
And it's one of those things with the amount, how often you spend a lot of time working on something that happens, like it used to happen an awful lot, and now we're spending more and more time on just the very small occasions that it happens, but because they're so visible and so recognizable, it's always over time those things
but
just
that is
show
generally a good thing. That is the fact that it's so visible and noticeable. It makes us find it easier, because otherwise, if it was a hidden thing that only happened in a corner, you only notice it once in a blue moon, then you would run with a big system that might cause way more problems later.
Yeah. No, and I think also this is why we are not putting any kind of patch yet, right? Because this is, I think, the good thing for us is that this helps us stabilizing the underlying system. Like some of those bugs are not even necessarily AI per se related, right? It's just that we are the kind of bottom of the chain. So if something goes wrong in the on the way, then the AI looks bad.
So the short answer of that very long answer is blame the chairs.
Of course, always blame the chair. And actually, again,
Bueno, dice que además, que si fuera. Que el fallo este que vemos, que realmente se ve así el NPC fuera de sitio, que es una ventaja porque así pueden identificar ese problema que podría suceder. El tema el tema de la inteligencia artificial, que están diciendo de que es bueno que ese fallo se vea así de esa manera, porque si estuviera en una esquina apartado el fallo y no fuera tan visible, que en un futuro no sería, pues podría crear un problema mayor por no haber sido detectado y desenvolver en otros problemas mayores, y que además de momento no meten ningún parche para solucionar eso, porque creen que bueno, que los cambios que se han implementando al juego y viendo cómo se comporta el NPC de esa manera, que ellos les sirve para referencia para el futuro para resolver ciertos problemas. Pero bueno, en el futuro obviamente será resuelto.
That we want to do with the AI. The AI right now are fairly simplistic. They run a few behaviors that they run in an okay way. They either
¿Qué pasa con la IA que son conos? ¿Por qué? O sea, cuando vas a un búnker y que la IA no responde bien, ¿no? En definitiva. ¿Qué pueden hacer para hacerlo más, un reto mayor? Están diciendo que ahora mismo estaba comentando ahora que la inteligencia artificial tiene unas instrucciones muy simples por el momento.
stuff. But there's so many other things that we need to look into. We need to look into how we flank, how we try to intercept and kind of head off the player, how we're gonna throw grenades to make sure the player doesn't hunker down in a single area and tries to snipe everyone from there. How they're gonna react to grenades getting thrown their way. There's like so many things left to do here. We're just beginning. Let's put it this way from a design perspective.
Están diciendo que simplemente están al principio de desarrollar el comportamiento de esos NPCs y en definitiva pues de cómo hacer, que tienen que tener muchas cosas en consideración, el hecho de cómo evitar que un sniper se ponga en un lado y de ahí mate a todo el mundo, o sea, cómo hacer que pues que los NPCs puedan tirar una granada para sacarlo de ahí o hacer comportamientos de interceptación de los propios NPCs para atacar al jugador o para proveer de esa experiencia. Son muchos factores que tienen que tener en cuenta para desenvolver la experiencia que vamos a tener nosotros jugable y que solo están al principio de ese camino todavía.
This is the plan. The plan is to use the navigation mesh, basically features that we have, but expand it in a way which can work more efficiently on the planet, right? So planets are, in essence, created by those patches, right? That lives around the players. And basically, we would probably use an approach very similar for nav mesh. So there would be like this kind of dynamic nav mesh, what I call a virtual nav mesh, that is going to be applied to planets. And basically, the patch of this nav mesh will only exist where we want to have AI. So it's going to be much more efficient than having like the full generation everywhere. And then of course, like basically the AI will function in essence in the same way as it will work somewhere else. The critical bit is how we connect those nav mesh, and this is part of the work we already started, I think, last year. There was basically the ability of connecting multiple nav meshes. So we have what we call navigation links. Navigation links are basically a way to define some object that can connect kind of areas, right? So if you imagine the UGF on some planets, right? Those will have like some parts that have the entrance of the ground base, and that one might just have a navigation links to the planetary navigation. And those one can also link multiple zones, multiple physics grid, and allow basically the AI to automatically transition. I think in the last year demo when there were NPCs entering a space.
Me está comentando que en cuanto al comportamiento de NPCs y demás, que tienen una cosa que como lo que le llaman, vamos a decir, los redes de comportamiento, por así decirlo, que tienen como una especie de zona en la que un NPC se puede comportar ahí de forma más eficiente. Y entonces otra zona donde se puede comportar de otra manera distinta, pues es más eficiente de esa manera. Y que en el futuro lo que quieren hacer es que cuando un NPC llegue a esa zona, pues que sea capaz de conectar con ese comportamiento adecuado, dependiendo del NPC, por supuesto, pero que sea capaz de utilizar ese tipo de red, ¿no? Pues que estará pues vinculada a objetos, al entorno, etcétera. Y pues quieren que eso sea posible, ¿no? Diferentes zonas con diferentes comportamientos adecuados para NPC, que el NPC se vaya incorporando a esas redes.
Type of life that we want to have there.
This next question is kind of topical at the moment. Has to do with server performance. So here's a question for the programmers here. How much of the AI that we see is affected by general server performance?
There is quite a bit. Maybe I think Andrea or Will can also, talk about some example of the spaceships. But for example, if you look at the bartender right now, let's take one social example, right? What sometimes happens is that is reacting to you a bit slowly, right? And that happens because like really the performance of the server when it goes too much down, like it takes a bit of time for him.
Dice, ¿cómo afecta realmente el rendimiento del servidor al rendimiento de la IA? Si afecta mucho. Y dice, está poniendo un ejemplo del barman que si tú a veces lo ves excesivamente lento y eso es porque está directamente relacionado con el rendimiento del servidor. Si eso hace que la IA se comporte más lenta, se comporte peor.
Quite a lot for like basically what we do is like to not go too much heavy on the server. We of course distribute calculation over time, but that means that if you have so much so many requests at the same time, it just takes more time to receive the results.
Dice que para no sobrecargar el servidor tratan de distribuir las peticiones o las interactuaciones con la IA a lo largo del tiempo. Entonces, al hacer ese tipo de distribución, también si hay muchas peticiones, pues se extiende más en el tiempo y se tardan más en hacer esas acciones. La IA tarda más en reaccionar.
Vision is through, it's physical vision. So it's like you can really tell if a character seeing in that type of environment like the player, right? But even that one is a distributed calculation. So you have a sort of cached information that you persist, that persists inside your perception system, and he updates every time he can. And if the player just pops out, and is not updating, in that case, of course, it's not that fast. We introduce some stuff like, for example, having some sort of priorities for people next to the players and stuff like this. But when the server is really heavier use, there's too much usage there, then of course it's like not that easy to make it snappy as it would be in a single player, in a single player experience.
I mean, this is the same for ship AI.
Dicen que ahora mismo el problema es que cuando un jugador hace una acción muy agresiva, o sea, como que de repente aparece y tal, que al NPC, pues precisamente por ese tipo de colas de producción, o sea, de colas de interactuación, por así decirlo, le cuesta más y se nota mucho más la diferencia, ¿no? De que un NPC va mal. De hecho, cuando nosotros vamos a un búnker, nos hemos visto meternos en búnkeres y nos metemos ahí, pues de repente, pues como que el NPC sí reacciona, sí que empiezan a reaccionar y a hacer las mecánicas y tal. Pero si vas muy rápido y tal, el NPC ni se entera de que estás ahí. Y está comentando ahora el otro compañero que el mismo caso pasa con las naves y con el dogfight.
You will see that it's really off where it should not be. And for example, William did some work on the accuracy for ship AI, for pilots anyway. I mean, and the accuracy basically something that basically simulates the skill, the aiming skill of the pilot, of the gunner. That updates in time. So the longer you are aiming at your target, the better you are, and you have a higher chance to hit. And if the frame rate is too slow, this will never happen, basically. So the aiming will be always off, a bit behind, or ahead, maybe depending on the strategy.
It
So
takes
this
time
is really
to
relevant.
Ya está comentando que en el caso del dogfight tienen un sistema que permite que cuanto más te aproximes a disparar al objetivo, cuanto más tiempo estés disparando, como que el objetivo, o sea, como que pues se va acomodando el disparo de la inteligencia artificial a poder ser más certero, a apuntarte más tiempo. ¿Qué pasa? Que está comentando que si hay una frecuencia baja de actualización del servidor, esto nunca llega a suceder y el NPC dispara donde le da la gana, ¿no? O sea, bueno, no donde le da la gana, pero no tiene esa puntería que se supone que debería de tener si el servidor fuese correctamente.
It's just really hard, like for the AI to even, I don't know, just find a great solution when the performance are very low. Of course, when the performance are medium, then it's a different thing. We also have like LODs update on the behaviors. When things are a bit far, we update less. When things are closer, we update more often. We are introducing, of course, like not everything is implemented yet, but we want to have better weight into what is the action, what is the important thing that we need to update as well.
How does that affect the way that you program. It's do you program this stuff for an ideal situation that maybe sometimes isn't always there, or do you have to adjust your workflow based on the current state of things?
I think it's a bit of a bit of both, right? So I think there are things that you need to do in the ideal case, like combat needs to be the ideal thing in the sense that you want to have it this.
Está comentando de si tiene que adaptar su forma de programar o su flujo de trabajo a lo que es posible hacer ahora mismo en el juego, en el servidor, a cómo están las cosas. Tienen que tener en cuenta el estado de las cosas para hacerla ya. Y dice que sí, que es un poco de todo, ¿no? Es un poco de ambas cosas.
Short-term decision that maybe is not based on whatever.
Que tratan de llegar a una situación ideal según lo que se puede hacer ahora también, ¿no?
I said standing on the chair, no, sitting on the chair. Basically, you can assume that there is a state that can persist and make sense, right? So if that one makes sense, then you can take the time that you have. Like imagine that you have a guy reading a book. If he stands 5 seconds in 5 seconds or in 10 seconds, it's not really important, right? That its state can communicate what he's trying to do no matter what. And basically the idea of writing behaviors is a lot about this. It's a lot about you might stream in any usable, right? You might start in any usable as a starting point. And then you might need to decide what is the best thing you can do. And the best thing you can do first can take a long time to, or like enough time basically to be decided. And also you might never find the optimal thing you want to do, right? You need always to react. The player could do everything, right? Maybe you are a janitor, you want to take the broomstick, and then the player arrives still, and then you say, okay, what do you do? So you need always to build your behavior in a way to handle situation, of course. But I think sometimes it's also just bugs that we have due to the server performance that we see. And
I would say as well. Sorry.
Vale, está comentando de que, por ejemplo, en el caso de que todos somos un NPC leyendo un libro y el NPC no es capaz de leer el libro porque el objeto no interactúa, lo ideal sería tener, es tener un sistema para que el NPC pueda escoger otra acción, ya que ese objeto no está funcionando, y pueda hacer otro tipo de acción o realizar otra acción más óptima, pero esto no siempre va a escoger la acción más, no siempre pues va a escoger la acción más óptima, y además también ese comportamiento ralentizado, ese comportamiento errático, ¿no? de los NPCs también se debe pues en gran medida al rendimiento del servidor y a bugs.
Experience just because they're calculating something which might be very cosmetic, for example.
So it's about not what the server can do for you, but what
you can do for the server. Yeah, it's also, I think this is distributed across all the departments, right? It's not just the AI, but it's like
it affects everything. Even the IFCS cannot really
absolutely.
run.
When it's all slow,
has consequences. It's every time because we do a lot. In a few places we do predictions. So based on the current position and velocity of the target, what will be in the next frame? It will be maybe here, but I mean,
but if it's in 2 seconds, then it's like
1 millisecond, 2 milliseconds. Okay, your prediction is okay. It's fair. It's okay. It's faithful. Not what happens. But if it's 2 seconds, it can be anywhere.
I think we'd probably do a whole hour just on how important prediction is to.
Sí, claro. Además, dice que una de las cosas que intentan es que comenta la frase de lo importante no es que el servidor pueda hacer por ti, sino que tú puedes hacer por el servidor en cuanto a la programación de la inteligencia artificial. Y está comentando del hecho de que muchas veces pues tienes que hacer una predicción para tratar de parchear esa falta, ¿no? Es decir, tratar de prever dónde basado en la velocidad, la orientación de la nave enemiga, pues saber dónde va a estar el objetivo para que la IA pegue e interactúe, pero si ese cálculo se retrasa, en vez de ser 1 milisegundo para corregirlo y pasa a ser 2 segundos, pues que de repente la inteligencia artificial se le pira la almendra y pues el jugador, pues, o sea, que va a un sitio que no tiene nada que ver con donde tú estás con el jugador, ¿no?
42 that I'm working on this very specific kind of chow line mess hall behavior, but all of this tech is very much geared towards eventually providing systemic stuff for the PU as well. So if you're eating and drinking
That's your
how do you
activity, right? We
satis-
call it.
yeah, eat and drink is your
Yeah.
activity, and you want to satisfy your hunger, getting kind of hooking all of the bits, because we've had little bits and pieces here and there of we've got people looking like they're eating and drinking, but are they actually are they actually consuming the things, and are those things being done based on their current requirements of whether they're hungry or thirsty? So I'm bringing that behavior in for Squadron 42, but then that will then key in, and some of our other designers are already working on, say, vending machine usables and how they provide stuff. So all of these things, these different possibilities, and the vendors, for example, taking the bartender tech and applying that which is really just now we've got kind of vendor behavior, and making pizza vendors and turning like the very core features and adding content to make those, to expand those to lots of different situations that can be used in the PU. And yeah, so there's lots of stuff that's gonna, little things that we're working out now are gonna be then allow our animators and artists and everyone else to generate lots of really great content for the PU.
Está comentando el desarrollador que están trabajando en cuanto a la inteligencia artificial, de que a la hora de estar, bueno, recordaros que trabaja en el tema de los comedores, la comida, además igual. Está trabajando en las vending machines, las máquinas de ventas, pues eso, las que vemos por ahí coño, no me acuerdo, de Big Benny's y de Pips y de las máquinas de vender, ¿no? Las máquinas expendedoras. Para saber cómo el NPC va a interactuar con ellas y tal, y que realmente el NPC no simplemente esté sentado comiendo porque está comiendo y ya está, sino que haya una realidad de que el NPC demande esa, o sea, demande esa agua o demande esa comida porque se está quedando sin agua y comida. Entonces, bueno, aparte de eso, pues comentaba también el tema de la creación del bartender y de que ya tienen esa mecánica, ese comportamiento de vendedor, que luego ese comportamiento de vendedor, pues va a estar también en tema de los carritos de la pizza o el de los tacos, el de los burritos, todo, ¿no? Al final, esos NPCs se comportarán de una manera de que pues cocinarán las cosas, supongo, ¿no? Cocinarán las cosas, te entregarán la comida, la pondrán en el stand y demás. Y que en definitiva, pues ese conjunto de pequeñas cosas que forman un cúmulo, pues son herramientas que pues al final resultará pues, en una paleta disponible para los artistas para poder crear contenido increíble.
That are in essence the part of our behavior tree, behavior flow. It's really more like a behavior graph there. But basically, it's like then we can understand how to then use that the concept basically that is like, oh, it's food inside the vending machine, and how we want to interact with that, and basically how you want to consume it. And then I think it's just like, and then you can use it to how you want to basically dispose of what remains, right? If you're in the, like what you're working on, Andrew, is like even like bringing back, your tray, and it's the same as like we have like some trash can where if you're eating like a candy bar, right, then you want to throw away your paper, like the wrapping. And I think this is all stuff that right now is possible because of also the bartender, right? Because the bartender takes off the glass, it places it back into the dishwasher. Dishwasher is just something that accepts objects and takes care of this, of cleaning that up. So I think it is really opening up a lot of the doors. Actually, what Dan mentioned as well,
Está describiendo lo que han descubierto en otros noticieros, que en definitiva pues el bartender es la puerta que abre la interpretación de muchas otras mecánicas, de muchos otros vendedores, como por ejemplo el hecho de que cuando él pone un vaso, cuando pone el vaso en el lavadero, pues o en el lavaplatos, donde sea, ¿no? Pues que ese objeto tiene la propiedad de recoger otros objetos. Y que el NPC tiene la posibilidad de colocar un objeto y ponerlo ahí. Entonces que ese tipo de comportamientos se van a poder utilizar para muchas otras cosas en el futuro.
And our game is very physical, right? So if the guy needs to get the ammo clip, it's really like there's really a magazine there inside the box that if the player arrives first, he takes it, and I think this is going to be really, really cool to see it happen.
It's great to see these little building blocks of different behaviors that because we're putting them together now in a lot more complicated ways, that we can build on those successes and build that level up, and getting someone who just says I'm hungry, he can go through all of these sub bits of logic, and it suddenly produces lots of variety of behavior. I was even thinking about, if he's hungry but he's not 100% hungry, that he might not finish all of his food and might go and have to then dispose of that, or things like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Claro,
the more time busy you
está diciendo el desarrollador de incluso incorporar el comportamiento de que aunque el NPC tenga hambre, no está del todo totalmente muriéndose de hambre y que no vaya a acabar su comida, que puede dejarla, o sea, la posibilidad de que deje la comida a medias porque ya está satisfecho. Quieren incluir esa posibilidad en el comportamiento de la IA.
taste right on top of the behavior, and then we add more complexity, and then it just looks more and more real.
And with the systemic stuff as well, the food that you're eating isn't just making you hungry. It also might, for example, if you're drinking beer, it might make you drunk.
Yeah.
And if you're
might be
eating it,
poisoned.
it might be poisoned.
Getting away from the AI stuff now.
Y además el tema de que si tú comes comida, pues no solo va a estar en tu estómago y ya está, sino que eso va a crear, pues si bebes cerveza, pues te va a crear, pues vas a estar borracho, o si la comida está mal estado, pues puede que te envenene. O sea que quieren meter una serie de características ahí muy brutas, ¿no? Para hacer el entorno pues creíble.
I think it is part of the gameplay and priorities on that one, and we're working a bit on the melee. As soon as we work on the melee behaviors as well, we can use that one, to start like fist fight.
I think it's also a matter of, you don't expect every bartender to do this. A bartender in Microtech is just going to call security. A bartender in, I don't know, a shady place might pick up a bat and whack you, or just punch you in the face, whatever. We also...
Claro, está diciendo de que está la posibilidad también de que el bartender, pues un bartender, por ejemplo, en Microtech, que simplemente si hay una revuelta, un altercado, llame a seguridad, pero un bartender en una zona más sombría, rollo Gringes, imaginaros, pues quizás agarre un bate y te reparta en el hombro.
Or the player wanting the drink, because then you'll have a player that just jumps behind the bartender takes care of him, that guy jumps behind the bar, and they just block that bartender forever just by getting in the front.
They should fight between each other, at that point. Just stop punching my bartender.
To start kiting one bartender to the other bartender. We're going to take a moment here. We're about at the halfway point and address the current server outage here. As many of the folks in the chat are aware, at the launch of our IAE this year, some of the platform back-end service stuff wasn't quite ready to go. It wasn't quite ready for the influx of people. This is a thing that happens almost every single year. We do our best to plan for it. We do our best to prepare for it, and yet it happens. I don't have any information about the solution at the moment. As folks are experiencing right now, sometimes it comes up and then it goes down and whatnot. I can say that in this internal chat that I'm looking at, there's a lot of fire emoji. A lot of fire gifs. At least 3 people are drinking heavily. I don't think they're actually involved in the fix. They're just watching the people who are. And one person suggested turning the whole thing on and off again. So I assume we'll try everything at some point. So, guys, we're here.
Bueno, está diciendo de que este año en la IAE, como el resto de años, pues que todos los años lleva pasando que hay un flujo increíble de gente entrando y que se peta el servicio, y que los servicios que están preparando de backend, que parece ser que no han estado a la altura de lo que es la entrada de la web, y que estaba mirando el chat interno y que dice que hay mucho fuego en el chat interno, gente bebiendo y otras personas que dicen que la mejor solución quizás sea apagar todo y volver a arrancarlo de nuevo, pero que están intentando hacer todo lo posible para tratar de solucionarlo.
We're at the halfway point. I wanted to give you an update. If we hear anything more before the end of the show, I'll come back with more. Let's get back to the AI stuff. All right. Creatures. A couple weeks ago, months ago, time in 2020 is blurred. It might have been a lot more than that. We showed some creatures on ISE, early creature development. One of the most popular questions that's been coming through has to do with the work, with the related AI work. Wanting to know if that's begun yet or not, and if so, where are we at?
Si ha empezado el tema de las criaturas
So I
o si
think
hemos
we
empezado, ¿dónde
basically
estamos?
started to discuss some of the creature we want to. Yeah, I saw your face, guys. I was like, oh, maybe I'm muted or something. I'm just talking.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, basically, some of the creatures we want to tackle first. I have like some of the basic ideas on how we want to structure the code, kind of clear, especially in my head. I need to possibly talk a bit more with Andrew as well about this. But the idea is that we're already splitting kind of creatures in different groups, right? There are smart creatures and less smart creatures. Like, of course, if you want to simulate something like frogs or fishes, they don't require like crazy behaviors running on them. They might require a little bit of behavior, right? But not much, mostly communication, audio, something like this, and some animation playing. Plus, I think there are like this split. The way I want to progress on this one is that there would be a basic flocking kind of state in which they can decide to be part of a flock, and when they're part of the flock kind of simulates them. And this can become also part of the more intelligent animals, like you have sheep, you have like kind of lions, something like this. Sometimes they move as a flock, and then when they want to do something specific, or when you as a player interact with them, then they can go into this extra mode that is like, I'm running a full blow behavior possibly to defend myself, attack myself, and something like this. So the basic structure.
Vale, está diciendo que el tema de las criaturas, lo que tiene pensado en la cabeza es que las criaturas van a estar divididas en principio en varios comportamientos, dependiendo de pues varios grupos de comportamientos para las criaturas. Y va a haber un comportamiento, digamos. Dentro de cada esa división de comportamientos va a haber otros comportamientos a nivel interno entre esos grupos de decir que forma parte simplemente del entorno, de sus cosas, de sus historias, y que luego pues la posibilidad de que el individuo decida hacer alguna cosa, o si el jugador interactúa con una abeja, por ejemplo, pues que la abeja pues pueda decidir si hace algún comportamiento agresivo, si huye, si lo que sea, ¿no? Que eso active otro comportamiento concreto para ese animal que estaba pues en ese comportamiento general, ¿no? Que estaba teniendo hasta que tú llegaste e interactuaste con él.
Inject similar to how I don't know, a ship would do a special action, or wants to show off, and yeah, basically. Not sure if he answers all the questions there. I don't know, Dan, if you want to add anything on that.
No, the question is basically whether we have started development, and I think we're very early here.
Well, early,
and
yeah, we're very early.
With very early. I think the guys that are working on the actual creature lore and the creature art, concept art, are ahead of us, but that is generally a good place to be.
Estaba comentando de si con eso había respondido su pregunta, y comenta el compañero que no, que yo creo que la pregunta se refería dice, yo creo que la pregunta se refería a en qué estado estamos ahora mismo actualmente en el tema de las criaturas. Se dice que en un estado muy, muy, muy temprano, o sea, que no han empezado básicamente, y que es lo que sí que han empezado es el equipo de Lore, que sí que está desarrollando ya pues historia para lo que serían las criaturas, y que van un paso por delante ellos, y que además dice que es un buen lugar para estar, no que vayan por delante de lo que ellos están haciendo.
And it would be a risk right now. We'd rather do one thing, do it properly, than move to the next.
Priority is always at the heart of
Y luego prioridades, ¿no?
every
Que no es una prioridad ahora
development
mismo.
decision. It's just as no matter, even with what is now 5 studios, 6 studios around the world, 500 somewhere almost 600 people around the world. There's still a finite number of resources and only so many things that can be worked on.
The only thing we can do, and this is what we usually really do, is try to be smart, right? So if we make a systems that we know it might be eventually used by the creatures as well, of course we do it in the proper way, so that even if you're not really starting officially the work on that, when you start a little bit ahead, right? Like all this usable code, for example. Again, creatures are not necessarily always like on ground as well, right? There might be, flying ones and something like this that use the same code that we use for, find a 3D path on a planet's surface. It's pretty much the same thing. We use it, and we implement it in a way which can be used in a generic way.
And things like flocking behavior, for example, can feed back into the crowd behaviors that we've got
Absolutely.
with the humans. And I was actually thinking about if they're kind of cosmetic creatures, you can. That's one example of where you could have the AI actually being on the clients rather than the servers,
Mhm.
because the flocking, if you got like a flocks of butterflies or something like that, if you can't catch them or interact with them,
Exactly, it's irrelevant.
then you can have those simulated to really high fidelity on your clients rather than the server, and get something really reactive, but can be very effective. Seeing lots of flocks of small creatures can be really cool.
Will having a pet of some kind be possible?
Yes, it would be possible because it's very similar to a friendly NPCs. Somebody like kind of when we talk about crew management, is that you hire a person. It's like, well, you buy a pet, and it's of course their behavior is gonna be different. Maybe the commands you can give them, might be different. You might interact in a different way.
Bueno, estaba comentando de que va a ser algo muy interesante el hecho de que tú, pues bueno, que muchas de las cosas que, que se pueden aplicar a comportamientos de animales, pues vienen también de otras cosas, que se va a poder aprovechar lo que es la inteligencia artificial desarrollada ya pues para NPC mismo, y asimismo el hecho de que los animales vayan en masa, en rebaño y demás, que puede ser aplicado también a las multitudes de gente, ese tipo de comportamiento o de código, ¿no? Y otra cosa que dice de que el sistema ese de que, pues, de que, digamos, los animales se agrupen y tengan un comportamiento general, ese comportamiento general del que hablamos, y que luego, pues, tengan una acción individual según lo que pase entre todos son ellos, que puede ser, pues, como un conjunto de mariposas que tú vayas a cazar y no seas capaz de cazar todas, y que eso daría mucha fidelidad a lo que sería el verso y el entorno, que va a ser algo muy interesante.
Pick up the dog. I'm scared what they'll do to that.
Well, no.
Careful,
I
careful.
didn't say pick up. I didn't say pick up the
Well,
dog.
if you cuddle him, you have to pick it up somehow.
Oh,
Okay,
Y
only
también están hablando de que sí va a haber mascotas y van a tener quizás otro comportamiento diferente a lo que sería un NPC, pero bueno, si puedes contratar un NPC, pues podrás tener una mascota y interactuar con ella de ciertas maneras. No sé yo cómo lo van a hacer, hay curiosidad.
will AI in the game, found at like NPCs and stations, towns, stuff like that, or even wildlife, okay, follow and use the same survival requirements that players currently do? Basically, will AI get hungry? Will they get thirsty? Will they have to heal? Stuff like that.
absolutely. So this is basically what Andrew's working on. Is exactly the stuff with them, and this way also like creatures will be the same, right? So creature will use this stat system. They will get
Ya están preguntando si la inteligencia artificial sigue los mismos, tiene los mismos requisitos que un jugador, es decir, tienen pues enfermedades, de necesidad de hambre, de bebida, o sea, necesidad de hambre, necesidad de comida, de bebida, todo lo que es el tema de que se ven afectados por el viento, tal, todo lo que nosotros vemos, ¿no? Y ese comportamiento dice que sí, la inteligencia artificial también lo va a tener, tanto en NPCs como en criaturas. Las criaturas también van a tener ese comportamiento asociado.
these values, and you can do it at the right moment. But we will basically have these needs that they need to be fulfilled to perform better, right? If you are like super hungry and super thirsty and you're fighting, you're not gonna be as efficient, as if you are like just fed up and full energy. Then do you wanna add some more stuff on the design side?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. It's just a simplified simulation that we're definitely don't want to use as many resources from the server side as the player does. It's just
Of course,
the effect is going to be the same. The guys are going to have needs. Basically, they're going to have hygiene needs, going to have food needs, drink needs. So they're going to try to cover those. They're going to try to find a place in their environment to do this.
Que dice que los NPCs en general o la inteligencia artificial tratará de buscar un espacio en su entorno que le puedas proveer de todas las necesidades básicas que necesitaría un jugador, comida, bebida, etcétera.
I think we tend to think backwards in a sense. I think those systems also help us to drive the behavior. It's not just we want to support it because it's cool for the race. Really, like it's cool to have that one because first everything works consistently, right? The same things that happen for the player happens for the AI. The AI is actually running the same code as the player. It is a sort of player on the server in a sense. Uses the same, of course, like there are some adjustment on the state machine based on the needs that we have, but the state machine is the same. The systems are the same. They're just actor in terms of the game. But really that one helps us also driving like a realistic behavior, right? Otherwise what you do is just do run like randomly, you go to eat something and stuff like this, but then it's very hard, like you lose the context, and that context you need to put it somewhere.
O sea, dice que podríamos hacer que los NPCs simplemente fueran a comer de forma random y demás, o la inteligencia artificial fuera a comer de forma random, pero así perderías el contexto y de esa manera pues que la IA tiene el mismo código, ¿no?, que tendría un jugador, o sea, se rigen por las mismas reglas.
The same thing is so useful is because we've got this the third person player,
Up-
and that,
ah,
therefore
well.
things are driven through animations in the exact same way that they will be driven
Yeah.
through animation with the AI. So yeah, that behavior just falls out of the same systems, which is really useful. Although there's always tweaks with there's some slight differences, but yeah, a lot of it is so similar and so cool
Yeah.
that you get that benefit.
So, so we are approaching the end. We've got about 10 minutes left. I do have another update on the adage. There are many people actually getting online and being able to access many parts of the website, so that's good. But somebody from the platform team just posted the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade GIF of choosing the wrong Grail and their whole face melting away. So that seems less good. So your mileage may vary. Stick with it. They're working on it.
Vale, que
As we
está
wrap,
mandando la actualización de la IA, que efectivamente que ya hay mucha gente que ya está pudiendo entrar en la web, pero que sigue habiendo problemas.
the idea of AI NPC crew. Now we've saved a lot of these for the end. They were clearly the topic that players were most interested in when they submitted their questions. We're going to talk a little bit about that now before we wrap up today. I do want to stress that when we talk about early work and stuff that is farther on the horizon, this is stuff that is farther on the horizon.
Nos van a comentar sobre la tripulación de NPCs y demás. Y lo que nos van a hablar ahora mismo son de intenciones, de algo que va mucho más allá, mucho más por delante. Van a hablar de futuro, de contenido futuro, de lo que van a trabajar.
And as new tech comes available, these things change and evolve over time. So we are going to talk about our current intentions with regards to AI NPC crew. So let's start off by first explaining the difference between AI NPC crew and AI server blades for spacecraft, because they are two very different things, and I think sometimes a lot of people
Vamos
use the term
a explicar la
AI.
diferencia entre los server blades y la inteligencia artificial.
Differential there.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
No one else wants to jump on it.
It's all you, Dan.
No, they're both AI. They are definitely both AI, especially
Ambos son
from our
inteligencia
perspective.
artificial.
They are going to be running the same behavior. How an AI needs to aim a gun to shoot down a ship.
Claro, como una inteligencia artificial necesita el comportamiento que necesita para apuntar un arma, que al final un blade se comportará de esa misma manera, utilizará el mismo sistema.
Component on a ship, you will plug it in and suddenly assign a turret to use that blade, and the turret knows how to do it. There are disadvantages here. First of all, the blades are going to be worse than NPCs. We have this grading of the player.
Vale, está diciendo que los...
Than an average blade.
Claro, dice que un jugador va a ser mejor que un NPC promedio y un NPC promedio va a ser mejor que un blade promedio, ¿no?
Actually going to occupy a blade slot, which means you can't equip another blade for other functionality you might want on the ship. So that is a valuable slot that you're losing just to have one turret start shooting without an NPC there. Basically, you're a cheap bastard. You don't want to pay someone to take that slot, whether it's a player or an NPC. Just pay the money and hire someone and get them to shoot. You can pay for a blade that is the cheap alternative. Don't do that. I mean, do it if you can't afford anything else. And then you have...
Dice que te puedes permitir un blade, o sea, puedes pagar un blade si quieres ser un agarrado, Pero suéltate los dineros y contrata un NPC o contrata a una persona para que lleve la torreta, que vas a estar mejor. Pero si no tienes otra alternativa, podrías pillarte un Blade, pero que es una alternativa poco recomendable para digamos, esclavizar una torreta con un Blade. Pero que al final, si tienes el Blade ahí puesto, pues que tendrá peor rendimiento y que además estarás privándote de utilizar ese slot de Blade para otra cosa importante, otra función importante de la nave.
some stuff up.
Yeah, behaviors are just the same behavior that an NPC will run. But maybe most importantly, the behavior will be the same, the activity will be the same, and maybe how you characterize the blade will go through traits, skills. So sort of editing your the skills, the capacities of this gunner in this case.
I think, as Dan said, it's like not all the seats can be replaced, right? So there would be the crew members that they would be purely NPCs, and I think the critical part here, I guess, is to like basically the same way we let designer in specific environment to ask NPCs to do things, right? This is how. Under the hood is the same way as when the player will give them commands, right? If you ask an NPC, say, go and be the turret guy, right? What will happen is the same as when a designer set up like a mission and he has an NPC sitting on a turret, on a turret seat. If you ask a guy, you say like, you know what, I want you to fix that panel, right? You can do it. And it's the same way as when a designer asks, an NPC to go and repair exactly that panel. So the way we build the behaviors, and especially like all this crew management, the part of the crew, the guys in the crew, it's made in a way in which they can perform by themselves as best as they can their jobs based on the skill, based on the traits, right? So imagine like you have somebody who likes to,
está escribiendo un poquito los NPCs, que al final también el NPC tiene la ventaja de que te lo puedes asignar a otra tarea. Si está en la torreta, el Blade no. Entonces, si tienes que reparar un panel, pues se lo puedes pedir. Pero dependiendo en sus habilidades, en las habilidades o el entrenamiento que tenga ese NPC, pues podrá hacerlo mejor o peor. Pero bueno, que tienes la posibilidad de sacarlo de la torreta y decir, apágame este incendio, ¿no?
Captain can go around and supervise the NPCs and see if they're doing a good job or not, and maybe just tell them something, and the same for the player will be basically, right? And then they can assign them, and also I think there's more gameplay. Say you can find who's best at doing specific job based on the one you hire, right? You might hire somebody really good on shield management, but he kind of sucks at shooting through a turret, and if maybe you need both, but you don't have enough money. You are one guy, and then you live with whatever it's most of your needs. But the good thing is that these skills and levels, just carry through the game. So it's kind of cool that you see the guy maybe getting better at some of those. Some of those will allow you to train. Some others will just be your character traits. If somebody's coward, and you just put him on, on.
Claro, dice que algunos NPCs serás capaces de entrenarlos, otros que no, otros que simplemente pues tendrán un carácter cobarde y pues no serán capaces de hacer ciertas tareas, pero verás como otros al principio igual no son capaces de hacer bien las tareas y luego aprenden a hacerlas mejor.
Gonna create this extra, layer of gameplay as well.
Y que añade esa capa de jugabilidad.
I would like to mention is that we're already building all of our behaviors to take skills and traits into consideration. So basically, even the guys you are fighting in Korea, they have skills and traits that are going to be driving some of the decisions. The behavior tree is exactly the same, but there are branches where it goes, well, do I...
Dice que ahora mismo en Carea ya podemos ver como NPCs tienen, o sea, los NPCs que hay en Carea tienen un árbol de habilidades, un árbol de características que van a influir en lo que serían las decisiones que toman, que ahora mismo ya se puede ver eso, ¿no?
The skill and trait
a un nivel básico, evidentemente.
Dictate how the behavior runs or how efficient someone is at the job.
And you as a player, you discover that, you don't know, right? So it's like there are some traits might enable you to do a tactic. Some traits might just make a tactic different, right? It's like, oh, maybe you do that and you're really not that good on doing it, something like this. Or the NPC thinks he's good at doing it, but it's not really.
If you have a very confident but stupid NPC, then
exactly.
Right? Problems.
That's actually what I've been working on.
Y la posibilidad incluso de tener un NPC que crea que es muy bueno haciendo una tarea, pero que en realidad es un desastre, que también está ahí la opción, o que se lo crea, pero que el tipo es un inútil. O sea, que dependiendo de eso, pues puede hacer que tome unas decisiones o que las tácticas que haga sean diferentes. y haya diferentes resultados de esa táctica de NPCs.
Actually useful as tricks are. So you might get a ship pilot who just like really sluggishly rolls just for no good reason and actually makes himself a better target. You know.
I think a lot it would be cool like to have like readability there, right? With the messages. It's like, look at me, you're never gonna catch me. And then you destroy him. You know, it's like that's gonna be fun.
Celebrarlo por la cámara, sí.
So it sounds like, so basically, blades are a personality-less, skill-less kind of bottom-tier automation for turrets only, and then above that there are AI NPCs who will have personalities and characteristics and aptitudes and things they're good at, things they're bad at, stuff like this, and they can operate not only turrets but other crew stations within ships.
Estoy haciendo un resumen, que definitivamente habrá NPCs que son que tienen diferentes habilidades, que son cojonudos, otros que no son tan buenos, pero que van a poder hacer varias habilidades aparte de simplemente estar en la torreta. Aunque estén en la torreta van a poder hacer otras cosas.
To leave your ship, then they're not going to do a great job shooting someone or manning the station. They're going to be upset. They're going to become careless. So you need to maintain your crew. You need to make sure they're happy. You need to make sure that.
Pero la tripulación tiene moral. Si tú no mantienes la moral de la tripulación en el futuro, pues van a tener pues igual se escapa de una nave, se en combate, te deja ir la estocada, ¿no? O sea, o hace las cosas sin cuidado. Que si tienes a la tripulación feliz, pues su eficiencia mejorará, claro.
What's going on? You have to watch their stats, make sure they're in peak working condition. While a blade is just a blade.
Yeah, cool. Well, guys, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy week to be here at the end with us to talk about AI. We don't get to talk with you guys nearly enough. In fact, when I called Francesco last week, I'm like, hey, and like I feel like he knew exactly what I was calling because I hadn't called him in so long. He's like, is it my time? I'm like, yes, it is.
Need to pay the price.
Yep. As far as a last update on what's going on, things are beginning to come up now. The publish process is beginning to resume. If you don't know what the publish process is, that's basically everything doesn't turn on. All the aspects of IAE don't turn on at the same time. They're all done in pieces so that we try not to overwhelm the system. The system became overwhelmed in the middle of turning on.
Está comentando de que las cosas están recuperando de forma escalonada.
Pioneer credits, stuff like this.
Para la expo y demás y la tienda.
In the middle of its checklist when whatever was happening. I still don't know what's happening. I've been here doing this, but I'm being told that the publish is resuming, so things are coming back online. So we just ask for a little bit more patience as that stuff is coming online. The best place to look for updates is obviously the status page that they have, or you can follow along on Twitter, for instance. I know they're doing a lot of status updates there. So because everything is kind of shady, we're going to forego the raid today and just wrap things up there. William, Andrea, Andrew, Dan, Francesco, thank you so much for being here on the show this week. Allow me to salute you, gentlemen.
Oh, no, not again.
Permitir que salude, señor. Madre mía.
I'll see you later, everybody. Take care.
Venga, se acabó el show.
Bye.
Y nada, pues se ha acabado el show y voy a cortar, chavales, y ya nos ponemos con el temita. Vamos a ver. Pam, pam. Un segundito que estoy aquí cambiando el título y esas cosas. Maravilloso, magnífico. Y corto y arranco.